Everyone remembers the blood, the screaming, the flailing, the radroaches swarming through sterile vault corridors like a nightmare breaking containment. It felt chaotic, brutal, overwhelming. But while everyone was focused on the panic, almost nobody noticed what the camera refused to show. Ronnie never dies on screen, and Clark disappears at the exact moment things turn lethal. That is not random. If even one of them survived that massacre, Season 3 didn't just inherit a loose thread. It inherited a future antagonist, and not the kind that charges in screaming, the kind that waits. Before we break this down, let's quickly revisit what actually happened. The Radroach fiasco erupts inside the vault, and the tone shifts instantly from tense politics to raw survival horror. Norm is dragged across the floor in a humiliating, violent moment that strips away any illusion of control. People panic. Some freeze, some try to fight back. Blood splashes across walls. Bodies collapse. The scene sells total collapse, but chaos is a magician's tool. When everything is loud, it's easy to hide something quietly. Ronnie's death is implied. We see the aftermath, we see carnage in the room, but we never see the fatal blow. No clear confirmation, no body-focused shot. And Clark isn't there during the worst of it. He's not present when Norm is dragged across the floor. He's not clearly shown when the radroaches are unleashed. For a character who has been subtly present throughout Season 2, that absence is not insignificant. Let's start with Ronnie. If the show wanted Ronnie definitively dead, they would have shown it. This series has not been shy about brutality. We've seen explicit violence all season. So when a character with established presence suddenly dies off camera during a chaos sequence, that's not an accident. That's narrative flexibility. Now think about survival logic. Radroaches are instinct-driven. Movement triggers aggression. In real-world animal attacks, playing dead is a legitimate survival tactic. If Ronnie was injured but conscious, staying still could absolutely have saved him, especially if the swarm moved toward more active targets. Ronnie doesn't strike me as weak. He doesn't strike me as fragile. If anything, he feels built like a high-endurance character, the type who doesn't go down easily. You can absolutely picture him lying there, bleeding, barely breathing, waiting for the chaos to pass. If Ronnie survives, he doesn't come back the same. He comes back humiliated, powerless, possibly disfigured, traumatized. And people who survive humiliation in the wasteland don't seek therapy. They seek leverage. That's emotional volatility, but Ronnie is not the main threat. Clark is. Clark's presence throughout Season 2 is subtle but consistent. He appears in the background of Norm's scenes repeatedly. Not once, not twice, repeatedly. He has enough dialogue to register in your brain. Enough screen positioning to feel intentional. He's not framed like a disposable extra. He's also present in the flashback conversation involving Hank and Pete while Cooper is on the phone with Moldaver. That scene matters. It places Clark near decision makers, near information flow. He exists in proximity to power. That's strategic positioning. And then the Radroach massacre happens. Clark vanishes from the most lethal stretch of the sequence. That's not chaos, that's design. Now here's what makes Clark dangerous. When the roaches are first heard, Clark doesn't freeze, he doesn't scream, he doesn't panic blindly. He grabs a fan and starts crafting a weapon. That is adaptive thinking. In storytelling, that's visual shorthand for competence. Writers don't give resourceful moments to characters they intend to discard meaninglessly. That's setup. Clark is obedient. He follows orders like the rest of Bud's loyalists. But he doesn't feel stupid, he feels observant. Calculating. A man who understands hierarchy but isn't blind to it. That combination is combustible. If Clark survives, he becomes something far more dangerous than Ronnie. Ronnie would bring emotional chaos. Clark would bring structural instability. Imagine Clark escaping through maintenance corridors, or barricading himself somewhere out of frame, or simply being positioned outside the epicenter of carnage when the swarm erupts. The camera never confirms his death. That's intentional ambiguity. And ambiguity is narrative currency. Now let's address the counterargument directly. Could this just be budget? Creature-heavy scenes are expensive. Stunts cost money. Extras cost money. Chaos scenes are edited tightly. Yes, production realities exist, but here's the flaw in leaning on budget as explanation. If Clark was irrelevant, The writers wouldn't have seeded him across the season. They wouldn't have given him recurring visual presence. They wouldn't have framed him near important conversations. That's not accidental. Writers don't invest screen economy into background wallpaper. Clark has narrative weight, quiet weight, and quiet weight often explodes later. Now think about where Season 2 leaves us. Power inside the vault is fragile. Norm's authority is shaky. Claudia's influence is growing. Trust is fractured. The system is already unstable. What's more dangerous in Season 3? Another external wasteland threat? Or an internal survivor who saw everything, knows the truth, and understands the cracks in the hierarchy? Clark represents the second option. If he survived, he watched the system fail in real time. He watched leadership lose control. He watched people die because of incompetence or arrogance. That kind of revelation doesn't create loyalty. It creates ambition. A blindly loyal man who survives betrayal doesn't double down on obedience. He recalculates. Clark isn't flashy. That's what makes him effective. If he reemerges in Season 3, he won't charge in with rage. He'll move strategically, align himself where power shifts, manipulate information, possibly even position himself as a stabilizing figure while quietly undermining Norm and Claudia. That's not speculation for shock value. That's character trajectory. And here's the deeper thematic layer. Fallout has always been about systems collapsing from within. The monsters are rarely just the mutated creatures. The real danger is human adaptation. The people who survive broken systems and learn from them. A Radroach massacre is spectacle. A survivor of that massacre who internalizes the failure of leadership? That's story. If Ronnie survives, he brings vendetta energy. If Clark survives, he brings calculated reformation energy. And calculated reformation is far more destabilizing. Now let's talk about visual storytelling language. When chaos erupts and the camera deliberately avoids confirming a specific character's fate, that's not random. In television, finality is shown. Ambiguity is reserved. The show could have easily inserted a half-second shot of Clark being overwhelmed. They didn't. They could have given Ronnie a clear death beat. They didn't. That's preservation of narrative options. And long-form television thrives on preserved options. Now imagine the Season 3 premiere. Vault believes the Radroach incident is a closed chapter. Norm consolidates control. Claudia advances her position. Survivors try to move on. Then a scarred, hardened Clark steps into frame. Not screaming, not ranting. Calm. Measured, and he knows things. That immediately reframes Season 2. The massacre stops being an endpoint. It becomes an origin story. Clark's origin story. And suddenly, every subtle background shot from Season 2 becomes retroactively important. That's payoff writing. Now let's be disciplined. Is this guaranteed? No. But is it narratively stronger than budget limitations? Absolutely. Budget trims don't align with multi-episode character seeding. And Clark was seeded. Ronnie is a plausible survivor. Clark is a purposeful survivor. That's the distinction. Ronnie surviving creates emotional tension. Clark surviving creates political tension. And Season 2 has been increasingly political in its vault dynamics. Power, control, loyalty, manipulation. Those are the threads being pulled. Clark fits that trajectory perfectly.